Captain Eric Morgan looked out the viewport at Earth's shattered orbital defenses. Just 3 weeks ago, humanity had its first contact with aliens. It did not go well. The Varaxian ships came without warning, destroyed half of Earth's space fleet, and left. Everyone knew they would return to finish the job. Morgan ran his hand through his graying hair. At 45, he had spent most of his life building ships for the North American Space Command. Now he was being summoned to an emergency meeting that would change everything. The shuttle docked at what remained of Space Station Liberty. Inside, armed guards led Morgan to a conference room where Admiral Paula Green waited. Her usual crisp uniform looked wrinkled, and dark circles showed under her eyes. "Captain Morgan, thank you for coming," she said, not bothering with small talk. "Our situation is worse than the public knows. Our intelligence suggests we have less than 8 months before the Varaxian fleet returns with reinforcements." Morgan nodded. "I assumed as much, Admiral. What do you need from me?" Admiral Green activated a display showing the devastation around Earth. "We've lost 80% of our shipbuilding capacity. The remaining yards are working at full speed, but calculations show we'll have less than half the fleet strength we had during the first attack." "So we've already lost," Morgan said quietly. "Not if I have anything to say about it." The Admiral's eyes narrowed. "You're here because you have a reputation for solving impossible problems. I'm giving you one now." She changed the display to show an orbital area filled with floating junk, old satellites, broken space stations, and damaged ships. "This is what we call the Boneyard, where we've been storing decommissioned spacecraft for decades. Your assignment is to build a warship using whatever you can salvage from this debris." Morgan laughed, then realized the Admiral wasn't joking. "You can't be serious. A warship built from junk, against aliens who cut through our best ships like they were made of paper." "I'm deadly serious, Captain. We need unconventional solutions, and you're known for them. You'll have limited resources but complete freedom to try anything that might work." Before Morgan could protest further, the door opened. A young woman in a lieutenant's uniform entered, followed by an older man with the weathered face of someone who had spent too much time in space. "These will be your key team members," Admiral Green said. "Lieutenant Samantha Wells, our best weapons specialist, fresh from the academy, but her designs are revolutionary. And this is Chief Petty Officer Frank Martinez, 25 years of experience keeping ships running with bubble gum and prayers when necessary." Lieutenant Wells stood straight, her blonde hair pulled back tightly. "It's an honor to work with you, Captain. I've studied your paper on alternative propulsion systems." Martinez simply nodded, eyeing Morgan with the suspicion that experienced engineers often had for officers with big ideas. "I appreciate the vote of confidence," Morgan said to the Admiral, "but this is more than impossible. It's insane." "Perhaps," Admiral Green agreed, "but insanity might be our only advantage. The Varaxians expect conventional warfare. You have my authorization to be as unconventional as necessary." She handed Morgan a datapad. "Project Phoenix Rising is now your responsibility. Your team will have access to the Boneyard and a skeleton crew of volunteers. I need weekly progress reports." Morgan took the pad, his mind already racing through problems and possibilities. "And what happens when I fail?" Admiral Green's face hardened. "Then humanity negotiates surrender terms, but I don't believe you'll fail, Captain." As they left the meeting, Morgan studied his new team members. Wells was practically vibrating with energy and ideas, while Martinez looked like he was calculating how much work lay ahead. "So," Morgan said as they boarded a shuttle to the Boneyard, "either we build a miracle from scraps, or our species faces extinction. No pressure." Martinez finally cracked a small smile. "Just another day in the service, Captain." Morgan looked out at the field of space debris that would become their construction site. Somewhere in that junkyard was a warship waiting to be built. They just had to figure out how to find it. 3 months passed, and the space around the Boneyard buzzed with activity. Workers in spacesuits moved between floating pieces of old spacecraft. But despite all the work, Captain Morgan was not happy with their progress. "This power coupling won't connect to the orbital station X-12 grid system," Lieutenant Wells said, throwing her tools down in frustration. "We've tried everything." Chief Martinez picked up a different connector. "That's because you're trying to make things work the way they're supposed to. These parts were never meant to fit together." Wells and Martinez had been arguing all morning. Morgan watched them from across the makeshift command center they had set up inside an old cargo hold. The stress was getting to everyone. They had spent weeks gathering the best salvageable parts, but nothing seemed to work together properly. "If we can't get basic power systems working, how are we supposed to build weapons that can hurt the Voraxians?" Wells asked, her voice rising. Martinez pointed at her tablet. "Your fancy designs need more power than we can generate. We need to be realistic." Morgan was about to step in when something clicked in his mind. He walked over to the large display showing their current ship design, a conventional warship layout that followed standard military specifications. "We're approaching this all wrong," he said quietly. Wells and Martinez stopped arguing and looked at him. "What do you mean, Captain?" Wells asked. Morgan gestured at their design. "We're trying to build a traditional warship using parts that don't fit together. What if, instead of fighting the chaos, we embrace it?" He began marking up the display, drawing a new configuration. "What if we build a modular ship? Something that can change its shape and function based on what we need at any given moment." Martinez stepped closer, his eyes narrowing as he studied Morgan's rough sketch. "You mean like puzzle pieces that can move around?" "Exactly," Morgan said, his excitement growing. "Instead of one fixed design, we build sections that can reconfigure. Need more power to weapons. Shift the modules to prioritize energy flow to the front. Need more speed. Reconfigure for engine priority." Wells shook her head. No navigation system could handle that kind of constant change. The computer would need to recalculate everything with each shift. "Then we need a better computer," Morgan said. He tapped his communication badge. "Dr. Warren to the command center, please." Minutes later, Dr. Lisa Warren arrived. She was a civilian AI specialist who had been working on salvaged computer systems. Her red hair was tied back in a messy ponytail, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. "You called, Captain?" she asked. Morgan explained his idea for a modular, reconfigurable ship. "Is there any way to create a control system that could handle this?" Dr. Warren thought for a moment. "A traditional computer system? No. But..." She pulled out her own tablet and connected it to the display. "I've been working on a neural network using salvaged parts from 3 different AI research satellites. It's designed to learn and adapt." She pulled up schematics for her system. This could potentially manage a ship that changes its configuration. It would need time to learn, but it could work. "This is crazy," a voice said from the doorway. Colonel Henry Davis, the military oversight officer, stood there frowning. "Admiral Green sent me to check your progress, not to watch you throw out conventional ship design completely." Morgan turned to face him. "With all due respect, Colonel, conventional won't work here. We don't have the resources or time to build a traditional warship. The Admiral wants a vessel that can fight for actions, not some experiment," Davis argued. Morgan pointed to the debris field visible through the viewport. "Look out there. That's all we have to work with. Either we try something new, or we might as well surrender now." The room fell silent. Finally, Wells stepped forward. "I think the captain's right. I can make weapons work in a modular system." Martinez nodded slowly. "It would actually solve some of our integration problems." Colonel Davis looked at each of them, then back at Morgan. "I'll give you 1 week to prove this concept. Then I'm reporting to the Admiral." After he left, Dr. Warren smiled. 1 week to reinvent spacecraft design. No pressure. Morgan turned back to the display. "Let's get to work. Humanity doesn't have time for us to play it safe." Morgan hadn't seen his daughter in months. When Amy's shuttle docked with their construction site, he felt both joy and guilt. Joy to see her, Guilt that he had been too busy to visit home. Amy Morgan was 16, with her father's dark hair and her mother's curious eyes. She ran to hug him as soon as she stepped through the airlock. "Dad, this place is amazing," she said, looking around at the busy construction area. Workers floated between large pieces of what would someday be their ship. "It's good to see you, kiddo," Morgan said, hugging her back. "How did you convince your mother to let you visit a military project?" Amy grinned. "I told her it was a school field trip to study space engineering. Technically, I am studying." Morgan shook his head but smiled. He took Amy on a tour, explaining their progress over the past 4 months. The modular design was working better than expected, but they still had major problems to solve. "We can reconfigure the ship now, but it's still too obvious what we're building," Morgan explained as they looked out a viewport at their half-built creation. "The Varaxians will target it immediately because it clearly looks like a warship." Amy studied the construction, her head tilted to one side. "Why does it need to look like a warship at all?" Morgan turned to her. "What do you mean?" "Well, you're using junk, right? Why not make it look like junk?" Amy pointed to the debris field around them. "If I were an alien, I wouldn't pay attention to a pile of space trash." Morgan stared at his daughter, then out at the debris field again. A slow smile spread across his face. "Amy, you might have just solved our biggest problem," he said. Later that day, Morgan called his team together. Lieutenant Wells, Chief Martinez, Dr. Warren, and even Colonel Davis gathered in the command center. "We've been thinking about this all wrong," Morgan said. "We're still trying to build something that looks like a military vessel. But what if we built something that looks like nothing important at all?" He showed them Amy's idea, a ship disguised as a cluster of space junk, weapons hidden inside what looked like broken solar panels, engines concealed within damaged satellite dishes, a warship that didn't look like a warship at all. "Camouflage," Wells said, eyes widening. "The Varaxians wouldn't expect it." Martinez rubbed his chin. "It would solve some of our power signature problems too. I found that certain salvaged components actually mask energy readings. We could hide our true power output." Dr. Warren nodded excitedly. The neural network could manage the disguise and real systems simultaneously. Only Colonel Davis looked uncertain. "This is even more experimental than before." "But it could work," Morgan insisted. "We know the Varaxians have superior technology. Our only advantage might be surprise." After Amy returned to Earth, the team worked with new energy. Wells led a small group of engineers who converted old mining lasers and asteroid drilling equipment into powerful weapons. They hid these weapons inside harmless-looking debris. Martins discovered that by arranging certain metal alloys in specific patterns, they could bend scanner readings around vital ship components. From the outside, their creation would appear as nothing more than a large collection of worthless junk. 6 weeks after Amy's visit, Admiral Green arrived for an inspection. She floated beside Morgan as they observed the construction from a distance. "I don't see a warship, Captain," she said with a frown. Morgan smiled. "That's exactly the point, Admiral. Neither will the Varaxians." He handed her a tablet showing the hidden systems within the apparent junk pile. The Admiral's eyes widened as she swiped through the schematics. "This is ingenious," she admitted. "But will it actually function in combat?" Morgan's smile faded. "We hope so. But we just received new intelligence. The Varaxian fleet is moving faster than expected. We might not have time to find out." The Admiral looked grim. "Then we'll need to speed things up. What else do you need?" "More workers, more parts, and a lot of luck," Morgan said, looking at their disguised creation. It wasn't pretty, but it might be humanity's only hope. 5 months into the project, the ship was taking shape. From the outside, it looked like a random collection of broken satellites and old space station parts. But inside, it was becoming a powerful warship. Still, they faced a serious problem. Dr. Warren slammed her hand on the table in frustration. The neural network keeps failing. It can't handle all the different systems at once. Morgan, Wells, and Martinez gathered around her workstation. On the screen, error messages flashed as the computer system tried to manage their unusual ship design. "We've tried everything," Dr. Warren explained. "The network can handle some parts of the ship, but not all of them together. It's too complex, too strange. The AI doesn't understand what we've built." Morgan rubbed his tired eyes. They were running out of time. Intelligence reports said the Varaxian fleet was only 3 months away. "If a computer can't understand our ship," Morgan said slowly, "maybe we need something that thinks more like us." "What do you mean?" Wells asked. Morgan pointed to his head. "A human brain. What if we created a direct link between a person and the ship's systems?" Dr. Warren looked shocked. "A neural interface? That's highly experimental technology. We salvaged some research equipment from the medical station, but it was never meant for combat situations." "Is it possible?" Morgan pushed. Dr. Warren hesitated. "Theoretically, yes. We could modify the neural research equipment to create an interface. The human brain would help guide the AI, teaching it how to manage the ship. But it would be dangerous for the person connected to it." "How dangerous?" Morgan asked. "Potentially fatal," Dr. Warren admitted. "The neural load could cause brain damage, especially in combat situations." A heavy silence fell over the room. Finally, Morgan spoke. "I'll do it," he said. "Captain, no." Wells protested immediately. "It's too risky." "We don't have a choice," Morgan replied. "Without this interface, our ship won't function properly, and I won't ask anyone else to take this risk." Before anyone could argue further, Colonel Davis entered the room. Over the past months, he had remained skeptical of their project, though less openly hostile. "Admiral Green wants a progress report," he announced, then noticed their serious faces. "What's happening?" Morgan explained their problem and his proposed solution. Colonel Davis's face darkened with each word. "Absolutely not," he said when Morgan finished. "This crosses every ethical line in military research. I'm shutting this down until proper review." "We don't have time for review," Morgan argued. "The Varaxians will be here in 3 months. If we don't have a working ship by then, humanity loses. I can't allow experimental neural technology to be used on military personnel without proper testing," Davis insisted. Morgan stepped closer to him. "Then test it on me now. Today. If it works, we continue. If not." He didn't finish the sentence. After heated debate, Admiral Green gave permission for a controlled test. The next day, Dr. Warren and her team set up the modified neural equipment in the ship's command center. Morgan sat in the captain's chair as they attached sensors to his head. "This might pinch a bit," Dr. Warren warned as she placed the final connector on his temple. "Just do it," Morgan said, gripping the chair arms tightly. Dr. Warren activated the system. Pain shot through Morgan's body. It felt like fire running through his veins and into his brain. He bit down hard to keep from screaming. Then, suddenly, he could feel the ship. Not just see displays or hear reports, but feel it as if it were part of his own body. He knew where every system was, how power flowed through the circuits, which modules were connected. "It works," he gasped through the pain. Though Morgan was pale and shaking, the test confirmed that the human-ship connection functioned. The neural network began learning from Morgan's thought patterns, gradually understanding how to manage the unconventional vessel. Admiral Green officially named their creation the U.S. Ingenuity, but Colonel Davis remained concerned about Morgan's health. After each neural connection session, Morgan grew weaker. Medical scans showed strain on his brain tissue. "The interface is killing him slowly," Davis told Wells privately. "But he won't stop. And we need this ship operational." Wells watched Morgan across the room, noticing how his hands now trembled constantly. "Then we need to find a way to protect him," she said, "because he's not going to protect himself." 7 months after the project began, alarms blared throughout the construction site. Morgan rushed to the command center, where Admiral Green's face filled the main screen. "Captain, our long-range sensors have detected a Varaxian scout ship entering the solar system," the Admiral said. Her voice was steady, but Morgan could see the fear in her eyes. "It's ahead of the main fleet, likely sent to assess our defenses." Morgan looked around at his team. "How long until it reaches Earth?" 48 hours at its current speed," Admiral Green replied. "If it reports back what remains of our defenses, we lose any element of surprise. Captain, the Ingenuity is our only option." Wells stepped forward. "Admiral, the ship is only at 86% completion. Several weapon systems aren't fully integrated, and we haven't done a proper field test of the engines." "This is your field test, Lieutenant," Admiral Green said grimly. "Stop that scout ship before it can report back to the main fleet." After the Admiral ended the transmission, silence filled the command center. Finally, Morgan spoke. "I need volunteers only. This mission is too dangerous to order anyone to join." Without hesitation, Wells raised her hand. "I'm your weapons officer, Captain." Martinez nodded. "Someone needs to keep this jump pile running." Dr. Warren stepped forward. "I'll monitor the neural interface." To Morgan's surprise, 12 other crew members volunteered. 6 hours later, the U.S. Ingenuity detached from the construction site for the first time. From the outside, it still looked like a random collection of space debris, slowly tumbling through space. Inside the command center, Morgan connected to the neural interface. Pain shot through his body as his mind linked with the ship, but he was getting used to it now. He could feel every part of the Ingenuity. The unfinished weapon systems, the patched-together engines, the disguise that made them look like floating junk. Setting course to intercept the Varaxian scout, Wells announced, her fingers flying over her console. "If we maintain our current speed, we'll reach it near the orbit of Mars." "Perfect," Morgan said. "That's far enough from Earth that they won't see our defenses even with their advanced sensors." For 20 hours, they traveled in tense silence. The crew performed final checks on all systems, while Morgan remained connected to the ship through the neural interface. Dr. Warren monitored his vital signs, growing increasingly concerned. "Captain, your brain activity is becoming erratic," she warned. "You need to disconnect and rest." "Not yet," Morgan replied. "We're almost there." Finally, the Varaxian scout ship appeared on their sensors. It was smaller than the warships they had faced in the first battle, but still technologically superior to anything humans had built before, except, perhaps, the Ingenuity. "They haven't detected us," Wells reported. "Our disguise is working." Morgan felt a surge of satisfaction. "Move us closer. Make it look like we're just random debris floating in their path." The Ingenuity drifted toward the alien vessel. When they were within weapons range, Morgan gave the order. "Now, Lieutenant." Wells activated the hidden weapon systems. Laser cannons emerged from what looked like broken solar panels. The first shots hit the Varaxian ship before it could raise shields. But the alien vessel recovered quickly. It returned fire, hitting the Ingenuity with energy weapons that tore through their outer hull. Port side hit. Martins yelled from engineering, "We're losing power to the main weapons array." The pain in Morgan's head increased as damage reports flooded through the neural interface. He pushed the ship to maneuver in ways it wasn't designed for, straining both the vessel and his own mind. Wells fired again, hitting the scout ship's engines. The Varaxian vessel spun away, damaged but still operational. It fired back, hitting the Ingenuity's sensor array. "We're flying blind in that sector," Wells reported. "I can't get a lock for the final shot." Morgan closed his eyes, relying completely on the neural interface now. He could feel where the enemy ship was, using the Ingenuity's remaining sensors like they were his own eyes. "Firing solution uploaded," he said, his voice strained. The weapons fired one last time. The Varaxian scout exploded in a flash of blue energy. On the Ingenuity's bridge, the crew cheered. Until Morgan collapsed, blood trickling from his nose and ears. "Captain down," Wells shouted as Dr. Warren rushed to his side. "Get us back to Earth, now." Morgan lay unconscious in the medical bay, his face pale and still. Dr. Warren stood over him, checking the brain scans with a worried expression. Lieutenant Wells and Chief Martinez waited nearby for news. "The neural feedback nearly killed him," Dr. Warren explained. "His brain shows patterns similar to severe electrical shock. I've put him in a medical coma to help him heal, but I don't know when, or if, he'll wake up." Wells stared at her captain's motionless form. They had won their first battle, but at terrible cost. The Ingenuity had limped back to Earth with significant damage, and now their leader was fighting for his life. "What do we do now?" Martins asked, his voice unusually quiet. Admiral Green entered the medical bay before anyone could answer. She looked at Morgan, then at the team. "I need a status report," she said, "both on the captain and on the ship." Dr. Warren explained Morgan's condition, while Martinez detailed the Ingenuity's damage. The ship needed extensive repairs, and they had less than 6 weeks before the main Varaxian fleet arrived. "We need a new command structure," Admiral Green said when they finished. "Lieutenant Wells, you're now acting captain of the Ingenuity." Wells looked shocked. "Me? But I'm a weapons specialist, not a ship commander." "You were Morgan's second in command, and you know this ship better than anyone except him," Admiral Green replied. "The Ingenuity needs you." After the Admiral left, Wells stood frozen, staring at Morgan's medical readouts. Martins put a hand on her shoulder. "The captain would want you to take charge," he said, "and we'll help you." Wells nodded slowly, taking a deep breath. "All right, let's get to work. Dr. Warren, focus on modifying the neural interface. It can't keep killing whoever uses it. Martinez, prioritize repairs on the defensive systems and engines." For the next 2 weeks, they worked around the clock. Wells studied the data from their battle with the scout ship, making necessary modifications to their weapon systems. Martins led repair teams that worked in shifts to fix the damage. Dr. Warren made the biggest breakthrough. "I think I've found a solution," she announced one day. "Instead of one person bearing the entire neural load, we can distribute it across multiple users. 5 or 6 people connected simultaneously could share the burden, making it safer for everyone." Colonel Davis, who had been surprisingly supportive since their successful mission, helped secure additional resources. He convinced other military branches to contribute equipment and personnel to the project. "The scout ship we destroyed has changed things," he told Wells. "For the first time, we proved humans can fight back against Varaxian technology. Everyone wants to help now." 2 weeks after the battle, Wells was reviewing repair schedules when a message came from the medical bay. She ran there to find Morgan awake, though very weak. "Captain," she said, relief flooding her voice. Morgan tried to smile, but it looked more like a grimace. "Acting captain, from what I hear." "Good choice by the Admiral." "Just keeping your seat warm, sir," Wells replied. "How are you feeling?" "Like my brain was used as a punching bag," Morgan admitted. "Dr. Warren told me about the distributed neural interface idea. It's brilliant." Wells updated him on their progress and the approaching Varaxian fleet. Despite medical advice, Morgan insisted on returning to the project. Though he couldn't stand for long periods, his understanding of the Ingenuity's systems had deepened through his neural connection. "I can feel the ship even when I'm not connected now," he explained to Dr. Warren as they worked on the new interface system. "It's like the connection left an impression on my mind." This insight proved invaluable as they trained a new command crew to share the neural load. 5 officers, including Morgan and Wells, learned to connect to the ship simultaneously, each handling different systems. As the Varaxian main fleet entered the outer solar system, a message arrived from Earth's diplomatic channels. The aliens had sent an ultimatum: surrender completely or face extinction. Admiral Green called an emergency meeting with the project leaders. "The Varaxians don't make empty threats," she said gravely. Their fleet will reach Earth in 10 days. Will the Ingenuity be ready? Wells looked at Morgan, who nodded slightly. Yes, Admiral, she answered. Whether the ship is ready or not, we'll have to fight. The day of battle arrived. 15 Varaxian warships entered Earth orbit, their sleek purple hulls gleaming in the sunlight. They dwarfed the 6 remaining human vessels that rose to meet them. On the Ingenuity, hidden in the shadow of Mars, Morgan watched the enemy fleet on the main screen. He sat in the captain's chair, neural interface connectors attached to his temples. Around him, Wells, Dr. Warren, and 2 other officers were similarly connected, ready to share the burden of controlling their unusual ship. All systems ready, Martins reported from engineering. As ready as they'll ever be anyway. Morgan nodded. Remember the plan. We stay hidden until the main battle is underway. The Varaxians must focus on the visible threat first. They watched as Earth's conventional warships engaged the alien fleet. The battle was painfully one-sided. Within minutes, 2 human ships were destroyed, their crews lost. It's time, Morgan said as the remaining human vessels began emergency maneuvers to avoid destruction. Lieutenant Wells, plot an approach that makes us look like drifting debris. The Ingenuity moved slowly toward the battle, appearing to be nothing more than a collection of space junk disturbed by weapons fire. The neural interface let all 5 connected officers feel the ship responding to their combined thoughts. They haven't detected us, Wells confirmed as they approached the rear of the Varaxian formation. Morgan took a deep breath. Target the command ship, the largest one in the center. Fire when ready. Wells activated the weapons systems. Lasers hidden within broken solar panels fired at full power. Missile launchers concealed in what looked like damaged cargo containers released their payloads. The Varaxian command ship was hit multiple times before it could react. Its shields flared but held. They've spotted us. Wells called out. 3 enemy ships broke formation and turned toward the Ingenuity. Reconfigure for defensive posture, Morgan ordered through the neural link. The ship physically changed shape, modules shifting to better protect vital systems. The neural interface strained with the complex maneuvers, sending waves of pain through all 5 connected officers. The first Varaxian energy beams hit them hard. Alarms blared throughout the ship. Hull breach in Section 4. Martin shouted, sealing emergency bulkheads. Morgan pushed through the pain in his head. Reconfigure for speed. We need to move before they can target us again. The ship shifted once more, modules sliding into a streamlined formation. The Ingenuity shot forward, evading the next volley of enemy fire. For 10 minutes, the battle raged. The Ingenuity changed configurations repeatedly, sometimes focusing on weapons, sometimes on defense or speed. The distributed neural interface worked better than they had hoped, allowing the ship to adapt faster than the Varaxians could respond. 2 more human vessels were lost, but the Ingenuity managed to destroy 3 Varaxian ships. Still, they were badly outmatched. Captain, we can't take much more damage, Martins warned as another hit rocked the ship. Engine 4 is failing, and we've lost 30% of our weapons. Morgan looked at the main screen. The Varaxian command ship dominated the display, still largely undamaged. We need to take out their command ship, Morgan said. Everything depends on it. Wells checked her scanners. Their shields are too strong for our remaining weapons. Morgan closed his eyes, thinking. Then he opened a communication channel to all hands. Prepare for complete reconfiguration. Everyone secure yourselves. He looked at the other neural interface users. I need to take full control for what comes next. Dr. Warren looked alarmed. Captain, that could kill you. We're all dead if this doesn't work, Morgan replied. He reached for the interface controls and adjusted them to channel all ship functions through his connection alone. Pain like fire filled his mind as the full neural load transferred to him. Blood began to trickle from his nose, but he stayed conscious through sheer will. The Ingenuity changed shape dramatically, becoming a pointed spear aimed directly at the Varaxian command ship. all power diverted to engines, and a single forward weapon. Full speed. Morgan gasped as blood now streamed from his eyes as well. The ship shot forward, directly toward the enemy command vessel. At the last moment, the Ingenuity fired its remaining weapons at one spot on the Varaxian shields. The concentrated fire created a momentary weakness, just enough for the pointed front of their ship to pierce through, embedding itself in the alien vessel's hull. The Varaxian command systems went dark, throwing their fleet into confusion. Without central coordination, the alien ships began to retreat, their formation breaking apart.